friends. Let me ask you a question. Have you ever been driving around northern Kentucky, seen a for sale sign in a yard, and thought to yourself, I wonder if it might be time for me to make a move? Or maybe it happens when your rent goes up again. Or when you walk into your house and suddenly it feels way too small or way too big now that the kids have moved out. And then the next thought hits you. Is now really the right time? Because let's be honest, moving is a big deal. It's not like deciding where to go for dinner tonight. This is your home, your finances, your future. And with everything you hear in the news about interest rates and the housing market, it can feel a little overwhelming trying to figure out if now is the right time for you to make a move. So today I am going to walk you through something that I talk about with clients all the time. How to know if it's actually the right time for you to make a move. Not what the headlines say, not what your neighbor says, not what your coworker who bought a house in 2012 says, because the truth is the right time to move is rarely about timing the market perfectly. It's about timing your life. I'm Sarah Shire Arnett, your Northern Kentucky real estate professor, and today we're going to talk through the signs that it might be time for you to start thinking about your next move. Now, the first sign that it might be time to move is actually one of the most common things I hear from homeowners, and that is simply this: your home no longer fits your life. When you first bought your home, it was probably perfect. Maybe it was just the right size or the perfect location and the right price for where you were in your life at that time. But life has this funny habit of changing. Maybe your family has grown and suddenly that 3-bedroom house feels like everyone is living on top of each other. Toys everywhere, bedrooms shared, and you are dreaming every day about just one extra bathroom so mornings aren't complete chaos. Or maybe the opposite has happened. Maybe the kids have moved out, and now you're walking around a big house thinking, why am I heating and cooling all of this space? I hear that one a lot. You might have bedrooms that haven't been used in years, a big yard that takes you all weekend to maintain, and you're starting to think something a little simpler might make life easier. Your home should support your lifestyle, not make it harder. And when your home starts feeling like it doesn't quite fit anymore, that's often the first clue that it might be time to consider a move. The second big sign is financial readiness. Now, this does not mean that you have to be sitting on a mountain of cash, but it does mean taking a look at your overall financial picture. For homeowners, one of the things I always look at with clients is equity. Remember equity? That's that fancy word for wealth. It's the difference between what your home is worth and what you still owe on your mortgage. Over time, as you make mortgage payments and as home values appreciate, that equity tends to grow. And sometimes people are quite surprised when we actually sit down and look at the numbers. They'll say, Sarah, I'd love to move, but I don't think I can afford it. Then we look at what their home is worth in today's market and what they still owe, and suddenly they realize they have more equity than they thought. That equity can often help fund the down payment on the next home. For buyers who are currently renting, financial readiness might mean something a little bit different. Maybe you've been saving. Maybe you're just tired of all the rent increases. Or maybe you're realizing that instead of paying your landlord's mortgage every month, you'd rather start building equity for yourself. That doesn't mean buying is right for everyone at every moment. But when your finances start lining up with your goals, that's another strong sign that it might be time to start exploring your options. The third sign that it might be time to move is when your location no longer works for your lifestyle. Now, this happens more often than you might think. Maybe when you bought your home, your commute was 10 minutes and it was awesome. But now you've changed jobs and suddenly you're spending 30 to 45 minutes in the car every morning and every evening, and that gets old really quickly. Maybe you want to be closer to family. I see that a lot here in Northern Kentucky. People want to be closer to their grandkids, closer to their parents, or closer to the things that they enjoy doing. Sometimes it's just about the schools. Sometimes it's about being closer to parks or restaurants or just having a little more land and privacy. Your location plays a huge role in your day to day happiness. And if your current location isn't serving your life the way it once did, that's another sign it might be time to think about making a change. Now, the fourth thing I want you to think about is something a little less tangible, but just as important, and that is your stress level. Let me explain what I mean. Sometimes people stay in homes that cause them constant stress. Maybe the maintenance is overwhelming. Maybe there are repairs piling up. Maybe the home is older and it feels like every year something new breaks. Last year it was the roof. Now it's the furnace. Next year it might be the water heater. It can be too much. Homeownership does come with maintenance, that's true. But when the stress of maintaining a home starts outweighing the joy of living in it, it might be time to reassess whether that home really makes sense for you. On the flip side, I also talk to renters who feel stressed because they don't have control over their housing situation. Maybe the rent goes up year after year. Maybe the landlord all of a sudden decides to sell the property and now you've got to move. Maybe it's just that you can't paint the walls the color that you want or have the dog that your kids have been begging you for. Housing stability matters. And when your current situation feels unstable or stressful, that can be a strong motivator to explore other options. Now, here's the fifth sign, and this is a big one. You've been thinking about moving for a long time. I cannot tell you how many times someone calls me and says something like, Sarah, we've been talking about making a move for 3 or 4 years now, but we just can't pull the trigger. If the thought keeps coming back, that's usually a good sign that it's worth exploring if now is the right time for you to make a move. Now, it doesn't mean that you have to list your house tomorrow, and it doesn't mean that you have to buy a home next week, but it does mean that it might be time to start gathering information. Because here's the thing. Uncertainty often comes from not knowing your options. And once you actually sit down with a realtor, look at your home's value, talk to a lender if you're buying, and understand what your numbers might look like, suddenly things become clearer. You may decide that now is the perfect time for you to make a move, or you may decide that waiting another year makes more sense. Either way, you'll be making a decision based on real information instead of guesswork. And that brings me to something really important that I want everyone watching this video to hear. The best time to move is not when the market is perfect, because guess what? There is no such thing as a perfect market. There will always be something happening. Interest rates go up, interest rates go down, inventory levels are up, inventory levels are down, economic news, oy vey, you name it. The best time to move is when it makes sense for your life. Maybe that's because your family is growing. Maybe it's because you're downsizing. Maybe you're relocating for work, or you're finally ready to buy your first home. Those life moments matter more than trying to time the market perfectly. And one of the biggest mistakes I see people make is waiting for that perfect moment that never comes. Instead, what I encourage people to do is start the conversation early. Talk to a real estate professional. Look at the numbers. Explore your options. You don't have to commit to anything. There is absolutely no pressure in just learning what your situation might look like. In fact, many of my clients start that conversation 6 months or even a year before they actually make a move. We look at their home's value. We talk about what they'd like to buy next. We come up with a plan so that when the time feels right, they're ready. And that preparation makes the entire process so much smoother. So, if you're sitting there watching this video thinking, you know what, maybe it is time for me to explore the idea of moving at least, then here's what I want you to do. Reach out to me. Send me a text message or drop a comment below. Let's just have a conversation. We can talk about your current home, your goals, what you'd like your next move to look like, and whether the timing makes sense for you. No pressure, no obligation, just information so you can make the best decision for your situation. And if you found this video helpful, do me a quick favor. Hit that like button and subscribe to my channel so you don't miss any of the videos I share about buying, selling, and navigating the real estate market here in Northern Kentucky. Thanks so much for spending a few minutes with me today, and I will see you on my next video.